here's something that ground my gears, and I had to come on the air. I had the opportunity to take the week off, and I said, no. One of my favorite people in the world, I'm sure it is yours, is Stephen Hawking. He's like 75 years old now, and he's still doing fine. The man has beat the odds on his disease, and I I salute him, and yet I don't. You know, the guy wrote that book, was it A Brief History of Time? Something like that. And I thought that was great. I read most of it. It finally got too technical. I'm not much into physics, okay? I'm a smart cookie. He's a smart cookie. That guy specializes in physics. Now, when I was young and cared about what was going on in the world, cared about trying to become a college kid or whatever, my leanings were towards geology, archaeology, paleontology. I really liked dinosaurs when I was a kid. Don't you? Dinosaurs are adorable. Who can beat a triceratops, huh? A stegosaurus. Those are great. Look at the big things and the monsters like, come on. But you gotta like start learning about ancient times and what's really going on the planet. And here's what Stephen Hawking, that bastard, said. He wrote, we are close to the tipping point where global warming becomes irreversible. You idiot. Trump's action could push the Earth over the brink to become like Venus. This is what the guy was saying. He's supposed to be a smart cookie. He says like Venus, with a temperature of 250 degrees and raining sulfuric acid. Oh, really now? He says, climate change is one of the great dangers we face, and it's one we can prevent if we act now. This is what Hawking stated. By denying the evidence for climate change and pulling out of the Paris Climate Agreement, Donald Trump will cause avoidable environmental damage to our beautiful planet, endangering the natural world for us and our children. You know, Hawking, you nutcase. It's like I said, this isn't his field of expertise. The guy was getting into physics and looking into the macrocosm and the microcosm, and he stayed focused, like, you know, in that area of a field of study. You know, he was in love with a woman that was a Christian. Now let's just think about that for a moment. He came up with this concept of the Big Bang Theory. Now, what does that tell you? The Big Bang Theory, that all of a sudden everything occurred in one thing, like the Bible says, and the Lord said, "Let there be light." That would imply, in a scientist such as himself, mind, a Big Bang. You would have to have a Big Bang for everything all of a sudden to occur. Or would they just all occur in one place? So he started trying to prove that the universe is ever expanding. And I got news for you. It's been disproven. He kind of like he jumped the pooch on that one, I think they call it. Jumped the gun. Anyway, who else is talking about this? Noam Chomsky agrees, said that the Trump administration has shown total disregard for the future of the Earth and is determined to dismantle the system in place to tackle climate change. Noam Chomsky, you ignorant slut. I know, he's one of those guys who said, well, maybe 9/11 was an inside job. It doesn't matter. Oh, really? Nomi McNomstein? Geesh. Showing total disregard for the future, there is determined to dismantle the system in place to tackle climate change. Yeah, well, Trump didn't fall for it. Trump was actually shown a slideshow by experts in the realm of climate science, and so he was educated. You can find you find the guys who did it, what the slideshow was. I saw it. It was pretty good, pretty revealing, in that it, you know, showed how he's just this whole Al Gore, you know, convenient lie is just that. It doesn't stand up to scrutiny. So anyway, Noam Chomsky said the administration is systematically destroying governmental institutions such as the Environmental Protection Agency. Good! is what I say. Good! Environmental Protection Agency. You mean for people who have a lot of money, they can get in there to the EPA and get them to turn the other way, ignore their pollution. So yeah, that agency's rigged. Oh, and the Department of Energy. Oh, like those people are the Boy Scouts. Yeah, he said the administration is systematically destroying EPA, Department of Energy, for the sake of profits and power. Well, I suppose you can look at it any way you want. How about taking away their power and their profits and letting, you know, the market do what it can do as opposed to being controlled by them? Now, I'm not saying that Trump's great in those areas, but yeah, you're taking a step in the right direction, shutting those bastards down. And the BRICS. BRICS, they want the Paris Agreement. The heads of state of Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa, which constitute the BRICS, are emerging countries. They called for the implementation of the Paris Agreement on climate despite opposition from the United States. Somebody in those countries, that's too many countries, somebody somewhere, it's like most of the people that sign on to this. And it's actually kind of a do-nothing movement anyway. The Agenda 21 has already been introduced. They have stuck their tentacles into damn near everything. The price of everything has gone up because they're already using this as a technique to siphon off the money all over the planet. That's part of the Rothschild central banks. Is now they're so happy. It's like they were siphoning, they were sucking the blood, the life force out of countries all over the world, but not fast enough. Now they got this thing. They got the global warming fraud. They have the carbon taxes, and they are able to very rapidly vacuum a country's wealth and resources. And that's the main thing. Let's see what they say there. A joint statement issued on Friday on the sidelines of the G20 summit in Hamburg, Germany. The BRICS leaders urged the international community to jointly adhere to the Paris Climate Agreement and assist developing nations in resolving issues associated with its implementation. In other words, hey, developing nations, we're sucking all your wealth away from you. We're taking away your infrastructure. We're draining your coffers. It's good for you. It's good for the world. And we call upon the international community to jointly work towards implementation of the Paris Agreement on climate change. Bastards. This is, like I said, Agenda 21. It was created by ICLEI of Enron fame. Remember that guy? He had this scam going in California where he would do SO2. And he was draining the coffers in California. This is ICLEI. And he wrote this, and then he switched over and changed the NO2 to CO2. And he already had it figured out. He already had it figured out. And who was doing it in England? It was that lady that was robbing the coal miners. Margaret Thatcher. So these are the people who gave us this crap before Al Gore got on board with it. With his, I fell for it. I'll admit it. I fell for it. I mean, you watch it, and he was so convincing and everything like that. But then, all of a sudden, I got dragged kicking and screaming to actually do the research and study this anthropogenic global warming scam. These guys are selectively denying development where it's needed most in order to dramatically reduce populations through mass starvation, because that's their goal, is depopulation. The carbon taxes eliminate competition by putting up an unsurmountable obstacle on smaller companies that can't handle the expense. So big oil's in on it, you see. They do it to cut the competition. They simply add the cost of the carbon tax to the price of their oil. It's just that simple. They're keeping out the smaller guys. They can't handle the taxation, so they fall by the wayside. Everybody says, "Oh, you're just a Koch brother fan. Oh, you be paid by the Koch." No, the Koch brothers were telling the truth because they were being gutted by this carbon tax. So they used the EPA and the International Council for Local International Council for Local Environmental Initiatives. The ICLEI is the technique they use to go in and just add taxes to everything. Everything, I tell you. You buy a candy bar, it costs more than it did because there's a fraction of that money will go to It's called trickle-up economics, you know. They intend to take everything we have. That's the goal of the people that are our overlords. And when we have nothing less, ladies and gentlemen, we have their permission to die. So they got this technique, they got pharmaceuticals, they got all these different ways of robbing us. So I got a few minutes here. Let me give you the science on it. And this is easy for you to remember. So memorize this. Take notes if you want. For the last 2.5 million years, this planet has been in a series of ice ages. Almost every over 100,000 years, get it? 2.5 million years. And then every 100,000 years, there's a brief warm period. So 25 times during the last 2.5 million years, there's been a warm period. And the rest of the time, about 90,000 years, the warm period lasts about 10,000 years. So the rest of the 90,000 years of that 100,000 year cycle is a glaciation. It's an ice age. We are not in an ice age per se at this moment, although the whole concept of age is confusing because an age actually refers to like 2,500 years. So forget that word. This 2.5 million years has been ice. But we are currently in a warm period, or are we? Or actually what we are doing now is we're coming out of it. Got it? 10,000 years. In this, where we are right now in this 10,000 year period is actually a 10,500 year point. And guess what happened 500 years ago, as if by clockwork? They had a thing called the Little Ice Age. And that's why they could point to our climate and say that it's been kind of getting warmer, because, yeah, we were in this little ice age. The Maunder minimum is the cycle of the sun in which the sunspots go away, right? That was what happened 500 years ago. From the 1100s AD, there was a severe cold spell, which really kicked in around 1560, and it ended around 1850. The glaciers were the largest ever recorded, and people were starving to death. In Europe especially, because at the time, where was most of our historians and most of the people that we think about and talk about, they were living in Europe. They were ice skating on the Thames. They were eating their own children. And that's the way these ice ages start. They have these little periods. Right now we're going into another period of time in which the sun, you know, ever since Al Gore's movie came out, you know, what was it, 2004? This planet's actually been cooling off. He called it too late. If you look at the records, in actuality, we've had record cold spells every year, and all the time, whether you're in the southern hemisphere or the northern hemisphere, there are record cold. And it's going on. It's right now. It's called a Dalton minimum, and the scientists predict that very soon the glaciers will get really huge. I mean, they're already growing. The people who study glaciers, there are like 250,000 glaciers on this planet, and most of them are growing, and have been since Al Gore's stupid movie. So yeah, so you got this 90,000 year period, and the last ice age we just came out of lasted about 60,000 years, but they average about 90,000 years or so. So nobody alive now is going to see what's going to happen, but pretty soon it's going to be cold again. It's going to be this little ice age is going to start again, and people are going to start starving to death because they have these major rainstorms and huge floods. The rainy season starts too soon, and it lasts too long. So the crop seasons are going to just go bad. Luckily, the people around the hemisphere are going to be okay, but like Europe or Canada, which is on the same latitude, they're going to be in big trouble. And the death toll is going to be in the millions. And if we could stop this thing, this winter without end that's coming, by creating greenhouse gases, it would be a good thing. It would be a miracle. But we can't. We can't do it. We're not creating greenhouse gases. They already are here. And because greenhouse gases are not what they say they are. So here's what's going to come, and none of us will probably see it, but this is what's going to happen. There are going to be glaciers covering all of Canada and northern Eurasia. New York City, Moscow, Bismarck, Scotland, the Netherlands, Moscow, Leningrad will all be destroyed or consumed by ice up to 2 miles thick, and it'll last for about 90,000 years. The sea levels are going to drop. They're talking about raising sea levels. 3,000 years ago, the sea levels were 3 feet higher than they are now. They've already started dropping. They're not raising, they're going down. And you can't stop it with your lies. You know who you are. The coastline's going to extend out in great distances, and it'll end up where it's normally is the edge of the continental shelf. So the water's dropping. It's going to drop 450 feet. And it'll stay that way about 90,000 years. And these liars know it. Because, you know, it's basic science. It's basic history. It's basic geology. But the problem is, see, scientists, a lot of them are frightened people. They work for the government, so they're not going to open their mouths and blast it out there. But there are well over 30,000 scientists who have, and you can find them. They've signed a petition saying it's all duty. It's pee-pee caca. So yeah. What else is interesting on this subject? They talk about the Great Flood in the Bible. Well, the Great Flood is in myths in all over the world. For example, in Atlantis from Plato, 12,000 years ago, and they got this story from the Egyptians. In India, Manu was rescued from the flood by Vishnu. It's an ancient, you know. So you find history dating back a long time of these floods. You see, what happens is there's these huge sheets of ice, then these huge lakes of water as they start to melt, and then all of a sudden an ice wall will break, and this huge, gigantic, thousands of miles an hour flooding will happen. And there are all kinds of places on the planet, especially like up in Montana and all that area along the edge of Canada, our northern states, where there's signs of great floodings. So yeah, there's been lots of floods. In Greece, Deucalion and Pyrrha, they survived this great flood by writing it out in a box. Where have I heard that before? The Maya also had a myth of the end of the last ice age, you know. It was at the end of the last age, that earthquakes and volcanoes and floods. Noah, of course, had the Epic of Gilgamesh on a tablet and his journey to find Utnapishtim, the Mesopotamian Noah, originally in Sumer. It's now called Iraq. So yeah, these are ancient writings, and yeah. So basically, these huge areas of land are going to disappear when the ice melts. But for now, as the oceans drop, they're going to find all these great civilizations. You know, they're going to find all these. They're finding them already. When scuba divers go down there and find all these buildings, they say, "What are these things doing here?" Well, there's going to be lots of them, because 450 feet down, we're talking about the Mediterranean. It'll pretty much be dried up. It'll be turned into a river. You know what I'm saying? Are you following what I'm saying? What I'm trying to tell you? So let me give you the science of it. Well, I still have a few minutes left. The driver of climate temperature trends and the impending ice age, you know, besides the seasons of the sun, the planetary tilt, orbital changes, but the primary driver of climate temperature is called reflectivity. It's reflection of heat by the white areas of clouds. In the years that there are more clouds, it's actually cooler. So you got snow and ice also adding to the white areas, and the reflectivity helps to drive. Don't get me started on cosmic rays. We'll be here all night. But anyway, the sea levels are going to drop as the evaporation from the water in the oceans contributes to the clouds, making more sleet, more hail, more snow, and ice, and you know, it'll reflect more heat, and that's how it's going. That's what drives it. Oh, but the liars, they want you to think that CO2 and methane are greenhouse gases. No, they're not. The greenhouse gas is water vapor. That is the only thing that you could call a greenhouse gas. You know, it's like we're breathing it, we're in it all the time. Some days you got high humidity, some days you got low humidity. That's your greenhouse gas. And this greenhouse effect that they are so worried about, it's a temporary thing. It's basically what keeps this planet from frying in the daytime and icing over at night. Got it? That's what it is. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon is hotter than 4 o'clock in the morning. It's because we have water vapor storing the heat. But you know, CO2. They want to say this is the trace gas. There's barely measurable trace gas. Let's talk about our atmosphere. Besides the water vapor, nitrogen is 78% of our atmosphere. Now, if they said nitrogen was a greenhouse gas, that'd be almost believable, because that's a lot of gas, right? Huh? But they're not going to say that because there's no money in condemning nitrogen. Oxygen is 21%. That's almost the entire atmosphere. That's when scuba divers go into the water. They have nitrogen and oxygen tanks, or mixed together. But you know, but that would be a hard sell to say that oxygen is a greenhouse gas, wouldn't it? Nobody buy that. Well, the next gas down on the most dense to the least dense is argon. 1% of our atmosphere is argon. Now, why wouldn't they say that? Huh? Because they can't make any money off of saying argon, because the source of argon is not really us breathing or burning things. You know what I'm saying? They can't say that we're creating too much argon. So they create this lie about CO2. Now we're talking about 0.03%, or actually I believe they said it's gone up to 0.04%. And that's good. We need more of it. That's how much of our atmosphere. They're trying to make us believe that our tiny contribution to this, far less than the burp of one good volcanic eruption, is a problem. They're saying that mankind's contribution to 1/10,000th of our atmosphere is changing the climate. It's like a mouse farting in the other room. There's hardly anything there. And they're trying to say, yeah, if you have a concentration of carbon dioxide in a jar, it can have greenhouse properties, but not when it's dispersed like that to 1/10,000th of our atmosphere. It's mule cookies. And they're talking about methane gas as an additional problem. And we're supposed to be very afraid of methane. Oh, methane is going to be too much. That's 0.0002% of our atmosphere. Really? I mean, that's a millionth of our atmosphere. They're trying to say that my farts and the cow's farts are greenhouse gas and they're changing the climate. This is, really? Huh? And you fall for it? Don't. Wake the hell up. It's really that simple. They think that there are a big crowd of simpletons out there that fall for it, that you don't study science. Anyway, I don't mean to nag you, ladies and gentlemen. I'm your friend. I just want you to know that there's some liars out there, and there's a lot of reasons for their lies. And the quicker we wake up to it, the quicker we can do something about it. And so think about it. Running for office. If you're a good person, I want to vote for you. And I'm Marz Theron. This is Conspiracy Comedy News on American Freedom Radio. See you next week.